Welcome back, everyone. Today, we are jumping right into a brand new explainer, and we're unpacking something absolutely fascinating, the Codatta Protocol. Specifically, we're going to look at how your everyday data contributions and staking actually transform into enforceable, transferable rights. We're talking about taking raw, easily copied digital knowledge and giving it an ironclad digital title deed. It is honestly a completely new way of looking at digital property. So let me ask you a question to get things started. How do you mathematically prove you own a piece of data? I mean, for decades, data has just been endlessly copied, pasted, and scraped across the web. But what if there was an unbreakable, cryptographic way to point to a specific data set or even just a single data label and say, hey, I own a fraction of that and I have the math to prove it? Framing and solving that digital rights puzzle is what our entire journey today is all about. Okay, here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to define tokenized ownership, see how you acquire your fair share, explore the power of proofs, compare transfers versus escrows, and finally, wrap up with the ledger's unbreakable rules. Let's dive in. Section 1. Defining tokenized ownership. Let's figure out exactly what it is you can own in the Codatta Protocol. It all kicks off with a foundational concept called the contribution fingerprint, or CF. This is literally the bedrock of the protocol. Think of a CF as a single atomic contribution. It could be one specific label on a medical image or a quick validation check. Once the protocol accepts and publishes that tiny piece of work, boom, it becomes a CF. You can actually hold unit-level ownership, which attaches a fraction of ownership directly to that single CF. Or, on a larger scale, you can have dataset-level ownership, which applies your fraction to a specific, curated version of a dataset, basically a giant bundled-up collection of those individual CFs. Now, here's a golden rule. Ownership here is always fractional. Whether we're talking about one single unit CF or an entire dataset version, those fractions always sum up to exactly 1.0. The pie gets divided between contributor shares, backer shares, and sometimes the protocol holds back a governed baseline share, like a tiny cut for the treasury or the workflow developer. But no matter how you slice it, the whole system is completely transparent, versioned, and perfectly balances out to 1.0. Moving on to Section 2. Acquiring your fair share. Let's see how these fractions are actually minted and adjusted. This is where we see a really elegant balance between labor and capital. On one hand, you've got knowledge contributors. These are the providers and validators doing the heavy lifting by submitting atomic contributions. When their work gets accepted as a CF, the protocol automatically mints a default share for them, right according to the task policy. But then, on the flip side, you have knowledge backers. They aren't providing raw data. Instead, they lock up their stake as a show of confidence to essentially underwrite the data's quality. Then, based on scheduled audits, those backers can have their fractions boosted if they were right or slashed if they were wrong. We definitely need to touch on liquidity too. It's an experimental but super vital part of the ecosystem right now. Let's say you buy these fractions on a secondary market, maybe through an order book, an AMM, or an over-the-counter trade. Here is the kicker. Buying a fraction only shifts the entitlement of the owner of record. It literally just changes who gets the check. The underlying payout mechanics and the actual math, that remains completely untouched. Section 3, the power of proofs. Because claiming you own a slice of data is one thing, but actually verifying it so the royalty engine pays you, that's a whole different ballgame. To actually get paid, you need exportable proofs. First up, you have the ownership receipt. Think of this like a digital pink slip for your car. It's a signed statement proving your specific fractional ownership for a dataset at an exact point in time. Next is an inclusion proof, like a Merkle proof, which proves your receipt actually belongs in the anchored set. You've also got transfer receipts and escrow notes that document exactly how things moved around. And finally, the snapshot hash. This is basically a cryptographic photograph of the ledger taken right at payday. It lets any auditor deterministically replay the payouts. Everything is meticulously timestamped and tied to specific dataset version IDs. But, what happens if someone cries fouled and contests an ownership claim? Enter challenge windows. For a set period right after any mint, adjustment, or transfer, people can file a dispute. Now, the protocol stays perfectly safe during this time because any affected payouts are temporarily withheld and rely on system reserves until the issue is resolved. If it turns out an amendment is needed, the system simply reshapes the ownership. And the best part? The receipts capture the before and the after states, so there's never any confusion about why your fraction changed. Section 4. Transfer versus escrow. Let's take a look at how we securely move these fractions around. There's a pretty stark difference between these two methods. A direct transfer is exactly what it sounds like. an immediate handoff. It's perfect if you're just consolidating your own wallets or settling an OTC trade. You're moving existing fractions so the total supply doesn't change one bit. On the other hand, a conditional escrow is a temporary pause. A smart contract or a custodian literally holds on to the fraction, and any payouts are either withheld or accrued until specific conditions are met.
Honestly, the escrow lifecycle is a lot like a digital trust fall. Step 1 is initiate. The current owner sends the fraction over to the escrow contract. Step 2 is satisfy conditions. Maybe you're waiting for a payment to clear, a KYC check to pass, or a milestone to be hit. And finally, step 3 is release or revert. The asset either moves safely to the new owner, or it goes right back to the original owner if the conditions failed. And remember those snapshot hashes we talked about? They ensure the system knows exactly who held the asset in escrow at any given millisecond, making audits flawlessly accurate.
And finally, Section 5, the ledger's unbreakable rules. Let's look at the absolute constitutional laws of this protocol. Let's rapid-fire the core invariants here. Number 1, snapshot truth, meaning later changes absolutely do not rewrite history. Number 2, receipts beat opinions. If a receipt and its proof verify mathematically, that claim stands. Period. Number 3, fractions always sum to 1, without fail. And number 4, append only. The ledger never ever edits the past. Any new mints, adjustments, or transfers are always recorded as brand new entries. Add the fact that reputation to ownership mappings can evolve over time, and that cross-chain receipts are supported, and you are left with an incredibly robust, future-proof system. Well, that pretty much wraps up this explainer. But before we go, I want to leave you with one final thought to chew on. As these experimental secondary liquidity markets continue to evolve, what happens when every single verified piece of knowledge, every image label, every validated data sample becomes a liquid, tradable asset? The implications for AI, data economies, and our fundamental digital rights are absolutely massive. Keep learning, keep asking questions, and I will see you in the next explainer.